But what about at home now that you're worried and you're facing winter? Because millions are struggling to stay warm with the wet weather, the cost of living, and of course, cuts to fuel payments.
Yes, winter is fast approaching, so it's crucial to find cost-effective ways to save on your energy expenses while staying reasonably warm.
So joining us to provide advice on heating your home, or at least staying warm somehow, is one of the leading voices on lowering energy bills, Nick Miles. And you are very welcome in here this morning. I mean, a lot of people say, well, in the olden days, you just used to put on an extra jumper. But actually, it's more serious than that, isn't it? What is the best way, the most cost-effective way to keep your home warm?
Well, I mean, some of the bigger things is we need to do more things on insulating our properties, but actually sometimes, it can be simple things like turning down a thermostat. Those that have got the luxury of being able to afford energy bills and keep their homes on the thermostat a bit too high. If you just turn it down by one simple degree, as long as you keep it between 18 and 22 degrees, can save up to 5 to 10% of your energy bill. So that's a kind of a very simple way of doing things, but it can be other little tips and tricks you can do as well.
Yeah, because I always get it when people say about this, but like 18 degrees is not warm for a house.
No, and it's twofold actually. It's that kind of relative temperature, but also it's the kind of drafts and things you have in your house. So it's the comfort factor. So what we have a lot of old properties in our country. You've got some 8 million hard to treat properties built before World War II that have got poor insulation, but also very, very drafty. So it's the temperature and it's the kind of the draftiness of them that kind of keeps us uncomfortable.
In good times as well, when we think we can afford to keep the house warm, we probably keep rooms warm that don't need to be. I mean, I remember when I was a child, the spare bedrooms upstairs, or if anyone was away and not using their bedroom, they used to be kept cold. I mean, it was really chilly to go in there.
Yes, and that's it can be okay or not so okay. I mean, you've got to be really, really careful. So what we do in the summer, we keep our windows open and doors, and we let sort of a lot of air and moisture into our buildings. Now, what I wouldn't recommend is to say the bedrooms where you obviously sleep at night that you never. It's a thing. So I would always recommend keeping that temperature in habitable rooms, but also it's not good to always not heat particular parts of the house because you can kind of attract things like condensation and mold. So you've just got to be a little bit careful about that.
You've mentioned insulation a couple of times, and that's all well and good. The problem is with all the things, it's always too little, too late, isn't it? Because people who are dreading this winter probably can't get round to sort of sorting out insulation very quickly. Also, they may not be able to afford it.
Yes, and that is a big problem, and that's always the challenge, isn't it? It's kind of making those decisions. Well, actually, when you should be doing the stuff is during the warmer months because you don't have the weather disruption and things like that. But you can do things like still, let's say, as you go up into your attic and you've got...
Is that the first place you should really insulate if you can
You
only
should,
afford
and that's
one
where the
part?
problem is, and that's where people always think, oh, I do have my loft insulation up there, but then when you actually open up the loft hatch and you see all those suitcases and Christmas decoration pressed against the loft insulation, well, that's not very, very effective, actually. The insulation should be nice and fluffy. Not pressed down, and so people think, "Oh, we've got the loft insulation up there," but actually
It shouldn't be compressed.
It shouldn't be compressed, no. And people have actually boarded it down as well.
Yeah.
They think, "Oh, I've sorted that out," but actually, it's effective when it's nice and loose.
Yeah, I mean, is it more old houses that are the problem? I mean, presumably modern houses are being built to a different standard now, aren't they?
Well, absolutely, and I'd say, government policies always kind of get criticised, but one thing that has developed in the right way is building regulations, and you look at things like insulation, air quality, ventilation. Those are all important things, but we do have a very old housing stock in Europe. Say probably in terms of kind of insulation quality, second worst in the whole of the continent. So with those 8 million homes, you do have a lot of old people and vulnerable people living in those properties as well, and those are the ones that really lack that kind of.
Can you still get grants towards insulation and things like that?
You can, but it's a very complicated landscape out there. You know, people don't often have the information, and when they are available, they are kind of very narrowly targeted. So they are sort of targeted, I'd say, to the most vulnerable. But sometimes the way these things are presented, and also kind of with government policy changing, you don't have those kind of stable
it could
footings out there for people to really make those long.
And it would take time to actually investigate too now, and maybe not quite enough time to get everything done.
Yes, and
the worst of the
you need
weather.
that kind of cross-party consensus. It should really be a medium and long-term strategy, not kind of a political football match.
Yeah, I tell you what I did when when the prices were really high, the heating prices were really high a couple of years ago over the winter.
You want
Instead of just putting the heating on, like you always do, right, it's time to put the heating on, you put it on and it's on every day for however long. Didn't do it at all. I instead just boosted it for a couple of hours. And then I live in a modern house that is well insulated. I mean, this is the difference. But actually, just a couple of hours boost kept it going and took the chill
It lasts
off.
quite a while, yeah.
And so we need to start thinking along those lines a little
Well,
bit.
that's very fortunate, because with your relatively modern house, because of the good quality of insulation, what you did there
holds the heat.
is you created that kind of thermal mass in the fabric of the building, that's your walls and your roof. So actually what you did is that the property there store that energy for you, because you boosted it, and then it sort of slowly released it back into that environment.
Yeah.
So very fortunate that you could do that, but if you live in a very drafty home,
it's not
you know,
gonna work.
it all kind of leaks out.
You start when the more you talk about it, the more you realise how some people must be really dreading this winter, because there's
absolutely.
nothing worse than sitting freezing in a really cold house. And I suppose if any of us have older relatives or know older people, we should sort of check up that they're okay from a
absolutely.
heat point of view, let alone
absolutely.
anything else.
Well, absolutely, and then we want people to live in the confines of a warm house. We don't want people sort of, and I had this sort of yesterday, sitting on my barber's chair, and even young people are really angry about this winter fuel cut, because we can sort of see images of poor pensioners sort of sitting on buses, or to stay warm, or huddling together in shopping centres, and if we have a very cold winter, we're actually very lucky that the last 2 or 3 years it's been relatively benign. If we have a very cold winter,
Touch wood quick, yeah.
yeah.
Nick, thank you very much indeed.